On my 19th birthday, I didn't get a party or a cake. I got a death sentence wrapped in a wedding veil. My stepmother, a woman whose heart was colder than winter stone, sold me. She traded me to the most feared wolf in the territories, the Alpha King. A man they called a monster, broken by past tragedy, ruling from a throne of shadows. She did it to save her precious daughter, my stepsister, from the same fate. I was the sacrifice, the disposable daughter. I was sent to marry the beast, expecting to be torn apart. But in the heart of his dark kingdom, I found a secret that could either destroy us both or set us free. The scent of bleach and lemon was a permanent ghost under my fingernails. It was the scent of my life at Ravenwood Estate, the grand manor of my stepfather, Alpha Marcus. To the rest of the Moonstone pack, I was Nina Hartley, the Alpha's stepdaughter. In reality, I was little more than a well-kept servant, a constant reminder of my mother's first marriage to a simple pack warrior who had died before I could form a memory of his face. My 19th birthday dawned not with celebration, but with familiar morning chores. As I scrubbed the marble floors of the grand foyer, my stepsister Charlotte descended the staircase. She was everything I was not, golden-haired, vivacious, and adored. She wrinkled her nose at the cleaning solution. "Nina, honestly," she sighed, her voice melodious but judgmental. "Can't you do that later? Father has an important announcement." I simply nodded, pulling my bucket aside. My silence was my shield, a trick I'd learned long ago. To be invisible was to be safe. My stepmother, Helena, was already in the dining hall, a vision of cold elegance and silk. Her eyes, the color of ice chips, swept over me with familiar dismissal. She never saw a daughter. She saw an inconvenience. Alpha Marcus stood at the head of the table, his face uncharacteristically grim. "A decree has come from the north," he began, voice heavy. The room fell silent. Decrees from the north meant only one thing: King Rowan, the Alpha King. His name was a horror story whispered to scare pups. He ruled all the packs with an iron fist from his fortress, the Iron Spire Citadel. They said he was a monster, his body mangled in the same assassination attempt that had claimed his parents years ago. They said the attack had left him with a twisted leg and a soul to match. A crippled king ruling a kingdom of fear. King Rowan has decreed that each of the 5 great packs will present a suitable bride, Marcus continued, his gaze falling on Charlotte. A wife to become his queen and bear his heir. He has chosen our pack to be first. Charlotte went pale. "Me? He wants me?" Helena rushed to her daughter's side. "Marcus, you can't be serious. Sending our Charlotte to that broken beast. He'll destroy her." The argument that followed was a storm. I watched from the doorway. Charlotte's tears, Helena's fury, my stepfather's helpless, frustration. I felt pity for Charlotte. No one deserved such a fate. The argument ended abruptly when Helena's icy gaze landed on me. An idea, dark and terrible, bloomed in her eyes. I felt cold dread snake up my spine. Later that evening, she summoned me to her private study. The room was opulent, mahogany and leather, a world away from my cramped attic bedroom. "Nina," she began, voice deceptively soft. "You know how much your sister means to us. She is the future of this family, the pride of this pack." I said nothing, hands clasped tightly. "The king demands a bride of Alpha Marcus's bloodline. You are technically of his household. You carry his name by adoption." Each word was carefully chosen, stones being laid in the foundation of my doom. "What are you saying?" I whispered, voice trembling. "The king has never seen Charlotte," she said, voice turning sharp. "He doesn't know what she looks like. He only knows that a daughter of the Moonstone Alpha is promised. Charlotte is delicate. She would not survive in the north. But you—" She looked me up and down, and for the first time she wasn't looking through me. She was assessing me like livestock. "You are resilient." The word was meant as a compliment, but it felt like a curse. It meant I could endure pain. It meant I was disposable. You would be a queen, Nina, she purred, trying to frame the betrayal as opportunity. A life of luxury beyond anything you could dream of here. I would be the wife of a monster, I choked out, tears finally breaking free. Her face hardened, the mask falling away. You will do this, she hissed, voice low and dangerous. You will go in Charlotte's place. You will pretend to be her. You will save your sister and secure this family's alliance with the king. If you refuse, or if you reveal this deception, I will personally see to it that your life here becomes a living hell, far worse than anything the Alpha King could devise. Do you understand me? My world shattered. I was being traded. My life, my future, my body, a bargaining chip to spare my perfect stepsister's fate. I looked into the merciless eyes of my stepmother and saw no way out. I was trapped, and she was handing the only key to a man they called a monster. My consent was irrelevant. The bargain had been struck, and I was the price. The journey north was a blur of grim landscapes and colder winds. I traveled in a heavily guarded carriage, dressed in Charlotte's finest clothes, a deep sapphire gown that felt like a costume. The 2 guards, stoic males named Gareth and Finn, spoke to me only when necessary. To them, I was the Alpha's daughter, precious cargo. They had no idea I was counterfeit. With every mile, stories about King Rowan echoed in my mind. They said his left leg was so badly damaged he dragged it behind him. They said the scars on his face were so hideous he often wore a mask. They said his rage could bring grown alphas to their knees. I clutched the simple wooden wolf my fathers had carved, the only thing I had of him, and prayed to the moon goddess for mercy I didn't expect. After 3 days, we arrived. The Ironspire Citadel was not a castle. It was a weapon carved from mountain stone. Black, jagged towers clawed at the gray sky, walls sheer and unforgiving. There were no welcoming banners, only stone gargoyles that seemed to watch with malevolent eyes. This was not a home. It was a prison. The carriage stopped in a vast wind-swept courtyard. A man stepped forward, tall, powerfully built, with dark hair and a serious expression. A deep scar ran through his left eyebrow. I am Silas, Beta to the king, he announced, voice a low rumble. His eyes scanned me with unnerving intensity, as if he could smell the lie clinging to my skin. Welcome to the Ironspire Citadel, Lady Charlotte. The false name felt like acid on my tongue. Thank you, Beta Silas, I managed, voice barely a whisper. He led me inside. The halls were vast and echoing, lit by torches casting dancing shadows on cold stone walls. Banners bearing the crest of a snarling black wolf hung from the rafters. The air was thick with the scent of pine smoke and power. I was taken to the throne room, a cavernous chamber dominated by a throne carved from single piece of black stone. And on that throne sat the king. He was not what I expected. He was not a hulking, deformed monster. He was a man, a dangerously handsome man, even with the scars. A web of silvery lines marred the right side of his face, pulling at the corner of his mouth and disappearing into his dark, unruly hair. He was dressed in simple black leathers, no crown, no finery. His presence alone was adornment. He watched me approach with eyes the color of storm clouds, intelligent and piercing. I felt like a butterfly pinned to a board. When I was 10 feet from the dais, he rose. Then I saw it. He moved with a distinct limp, his left leg stiff and unyielding. It didn't make him look weak. The slight imperfection in his otherwise powerful grace made him seem more dangerous, like a wounded predator that had learned to kill with even greater efficiency. So, he said, his voice a low, gravelly baritone that vibrated through the stone floor. You are the daughter of the Moonstone Alpha. It was a statement, not a question. I curtsied, knees trembling. Your Majesty, I am Charlotte Hartley. He descended the steps, his limp more pronounced with each deliberate movement. He stopped directly in front of me, so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body. He didn't look at my face. He inhaled deeply, his eyes closing for a fraction of a second. A frown flickered across his scarred features. "You smell of fear," he stated, voice devoid of emotion. "And something else. Jasmine and old parchment. Not the scent of an alpha's pampered daughter." Panic seized me. He knew. Of course he knew. A wolf's sense of smell could tell 1,000 stories. He leaned in closer, his lips brushing my ear. The deal was, "For the firstborn alpha daughter," he murmured, breath a warm shock against my skin. "And you, little dove, are no alpha." My blood ran cold. This was it. He would execute me for the deception. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for the killing blow. Instead, he pulled back. He stared at me for a long, silent moment, his gray eyes searching my face. I don't know what he saw there. My terror, my resignation, my despair. But something in his expression shifted. It wasn't kindness, but perhaps a flicker of curiosity. "Your alpha has played a dangerous game," he said, voice loud enough for Beta Silas and the guards to hear. "But you are here, and the bargain will be honored." He turned to Silas. "Show Lady Charlotte to her chambers. She is to be my queen. Our wedding will be on the next full moon." He dismissed me with a wave, turning his back and limping back to his throne. I was left standing there, shaking and breathless. He knew I was a fraud, yet he was accepting me. Why? As Silas led me away, I risked a glance back. King Rowan was watching me, his scarred face unreadable, his storm-cloud eyes holding a terrifying secret. I hadn't been saved. I had just been locked in a much more dangerous cage, and the monster himself held the key. The chambers I was given were fit for a queen. A vast canopy bed draped in black velvet, a fireplace large enough to stand in, and a balcony overlooking a snow-dusted pine forest. It was a beautiful prison. Maids, led by an older, stern-faced woman named Alara, were assigned to me. They were efficient and silent, their eyes avoiding mine. I was a foreign object in their world, a queen by decree, but not by acceptance. The days leading up to the full moon wedding were a lonely, suffocating ordeal. I saw King Rowan only at evening meals. We would sit at opposite ends of a long, dark wood table, the space between us a yawning chasm. Rowan never spoke to me. He would eat in focused, almost predatory silence. He never addressed my deception. He simply let it hang in the air between us, a silent, deadly threat. He called me my lady, a title that felt both formal and mocking. I spent my time exploring the Citadel's library, a magnificent circular room with floor-to-ceiling shelves. The scent of old paper and leather was a comfort. It was here that I began to learn about the man I was to marry. A scribe's note about a young Prince Rowan who loved to study maps. A passage in a medical text describing the devastating effects of wolfsbane poisoning, the same poison used in the attack on the royal family. One evening, unable to sleep, I wandered onto my balcony. Below, in a secluded training yard, a lone figure moved with brutal grace. It was Rowan. He was shirtless despite the cold, his back a tapestry of scars that gleamed in moonlight. He moved through combat exercises, a heavy broadsword singing through the air. His limp was there, but he had incorporated it into his fighting style, using his stronger right leg as a powerful pivot. He was not a broken man trying to fight. He was a master warrior who had forged his very brokenness into a weapon. There was raw, controlled fury in his movements, deep-seated pain being exercised with every swing of the blade. For the first time I saw not a king or a monster, but a man haunted by ghosts. A few days before the wedding, I was in the library when a high-ranking pack member, a burly, one-eyed alpha named Garrett, cornered me. His scent was sour with contempt. "So you're to be our queen?" he sneered, blocking my path. "A pale little thing from the south. You think you have what it takes to stand beside him?" I am where the king has commanded me to be, I said, voice steadier than I felt. He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. He commands and we obey. But some of us remember a time before him. A time of a true king and queen, before their own son's weakness allowed them to be slaughtered. The insult was so vile it struck me dumb. He was blaming Rowan for his parents' murder. Before I could process the cruelty, a shadow fell over us. Is there a problem, Garrett? Rowan's voice was deceptively calm, but the temperature seemed to drop. Garrett paled, bravado vanishing. No, Your Majesty. Just welcoming our new queen. Rowan took a slow step forward, his limp barely noticeable. His storm cloud eyes were fixed on Garrett, holding a promise of chilling violence. My future queen requires no welcome from you. She requires your obedience and your respect. You will give her both, or I will strip the rank from your back and the skin from your bones. Leave us. Garrett practically scrambled out. Rowan turned his gaze to me. The fury was gone, replaced by that same unreadable scrutiny. You should not be alone in these halls, he said. It wasn't a suggestion. There are wolves here who still bare their teeth at the memory of the war that united the packs. He said it was your fault, I whispered, the words tumbling out. That your parents... A muscle feathered in his jaw, the scars seeming to deepen. He looked away toward the towering shelves. Many things are said in the shadows of this citadel, he said, voice tight. Most are lies. He paused. The poison that killed my parents only crippled me because I was younger, smaller. It wasn't weakness that saved me. It was chance. It was the most he had ever said to me, a crack in the obsidian wall around his heart. He was showing me a piece of his pain, a glimpse of the boy who had survived when his parents had not. He then looked directly at me. The full moon is in 2 days. You will be my queen. The pack must see a united front. They must see strength. Your fear makes you look weak. And I, he finished, voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl, will not have a weak queen. He turned and left me there. He had defended me, he had confided in me, and he had threatened me, all in the space of a minute. I was beginning to understand that King Rowan was a man of brutal contradictions, and I was now standing at the very center of them. Our wedding was a stark, solemn affair held under the cold light of the full moon in the citadel's ancient stone circle. There was no music, no celebration, only the gathered members of Rowan's inner circle and the pack's elders. I wore a gown of silver that felt as heavy as armor. Rowan stood before me, dressed in black furs, the moonlight accentuating his scars. When the elder called for the vows, Rowan took my hand. His touch was surprisingly warm, his calloused fingers wrapping around mine. I, Rowan of the Ironspire clan, take you as my mate, my queen, he intoned, voice echoing. I vow to protect you, to provide for you, and to bind my life to yours. When it was my turn, I repeated the vows, voice trembling but clear. I, Nina of the Moonstone Pack, take you as my mate, my alpha, and my king. I used my own name. It was a small act of defiance, a desperate cling to who I was. Rowan's grip tightened on my hand for a fraction of a second, the only acknowledgement that he'd noticed. Then came the marking. A shiver of primal fear went through me as he leaned in, his face buried in the curve of my neck. I expected pain, a possessive, brutal claiming. Instead, his lips brushed my skin softly before his teeth grazed my flesh. It was a sharp sting, a brief, intense shock that sent a wave of heat through my entire body, followed by a dizzying sense of connection. I felt a phantom echo of his pain, his loneliness, his immense strength. The bond snapped into place, a permanent, invisible tether between us. When he pulled back, his storm cloud eyes were dark with an emotion I couldn't name. Our wedding night was not what I'd feared. He escorted me to our chambers and simply said, "The pack has seen the union. That is all that matters for now. This side of the bed is yours." He then retired to a large armchair by the fire, with a book, leaving me to the vast expanse of the bed. He was honoring a boundary I hadn't even dared to ask for. Life as the queen was profoundly isolating. While I no longer scrubbed floors, I was trapped in a different way. Pack members watched me with suspicion. I was the Southerner, the fragile replacement bride. Beta Silas was a constant shadow, his loyalty to Rowan making him deeply mistrustful of me and the deception I represented. He was polite, but his eyes held the coldness of a jailer. My only solace remained the library. I began to organize and catalog scrolls, giving myself purpose. It was during this task that I found the first clue that something was deeply wrong. Tucked inside a dense history of pack treaties, I found a loose piece of parchment. It wasn't old. The ink was fresh. It was a list of names. I recognized Garrett. Beside his name was another, Lord Brennan, the alpha of the Bloodriver pack, my stepmother Helena's birth pack. They had been subjugated by Rowan's father years ago and were known to harbor a bitter grudge. A chill went down my spine. Why was this here? A few days later, a more sinister discovery followed. I was in the kitchens when I overheard 2 servants whispering. They fell silent as I approached, but I'd caught a few words. Shipment from the south, not supplies. Lord Brennan's insignia. A shipment from my stepmother's old pack. I began paying closer attention to the Citadel's logistics. Using my limited authority as queen, I requested recent cargo manifests from the quartermaster. Most were lists of grain, steel, and furs, but one from 3 days ago listed a crate of rare southern herbs for the apothecary. The manifest was signed with a symbol I recognized, a sigil for a minor house sworn to Lord Brennan. Driven by terrible premonition, I went to the apothecary. It was a dark, pungent room filled with drying herbs and bottled concoctions. I found the crate hidden in the back behind sacks of common roots. Prying open the lid, I found not herbs, but small, carefully wrapped vials of dark, viscous liquid. The scent hit me, acrid and sickeningly familiar from my reading. Wolfsbane, a potent, refined version, enough to poison the Citadel's main well or taint an entire feast. My heart hammered. This was not random discontent. This was organized conspiracy. Garrett, Lord Brennan, my stepmother's pack, they were plotting to kill Rowan. And the weapon was the very same poison that had killed his parents and crippled him. I stood there frozen, the vials cool against my trembling fingers. I held Rowan's life in my hands. I was a fraud, a lie sent to his court. Revealing this would mean exposing my own deception. Helena had not just traded me to save Charlotte. She had sent me into a viper's nest. Was I a pawn in their game? Was I meant to be the distraction? Or worse, the scapegoat when the king fell? I had a choice. I could stay silent, let the assassins make their move, and perhaps be free in the chaos. Or I could warn the one man who had every right to hate me. The weight of the secret felt like a physical stone in my chest. For 2 days, I was paralyzed by indecision. The vials of wolfsbane haunted my mind. Every time I looked at Rowan during our silent evening meals, I saw a dead man walking. The conspirators were moving carefully, and I had no idea when they planned to strike. My anxiety did not go unnoticed. Rowan's storm-cloud eyes would narrow on me, his gaze sharp and questioning. The bond between us, that strange ethereal connection forged by his mark, hummed with a low frequency of his suspicion and my terror. The breaking point came during a meeting of Rowan's war council, to which I was now required to attend as queen. I sat at his side, a silent figurehead, while his alphas discussed border skirmishes with rogue wolves. Garrett was there, his voice loud and opinionated, pushing for a patrol to be sent to the Eastern Pass, a move that would leave the Citadel with a skeleton crew of guards. It was a clear, strategic ploy. Suddenly, Rowan slammed, his hand down on the stone table. The resulting crack made every alpha flinch. "Enough!" he growled, voice like thunder. The room fell deathly silent. His gaze, however, wasn't on Garrett. It was on me. "The council is dismissed. Everyone out. The Queen and I need to speak." The Alphas filed out, casting confused and wary glances our way. Beta Silas lingered at the door. "Silas. Out." The Beta bowed stiffly and closed the heavy oak doors, leaving us alone. Rowan rose and limped around the table toward me. He moved with coiled tension, every step deliberate and menacing. He stopped before me, trapping me in my chair. "For days you have been a ghost at my table," he began, voice dangerously soft. "You flinch in the shadows. Your scent is thick with fear. Not of me, but of something else. Something you are hiding." He leaned down, placing his scarred hands on the arms of my chair, his face inches from mine. "I have tolerated your secrets, little dove. My patience has come to an end. Tell me what you know." Tears welled in my eyes. This was it, the moment of truth. "They're going to kill you," I whispered, the words ragged. His expression didn't change. "Many have tried. Who are they?" My story tumbled out in a frantic rush. I told him everything. The trade, my real name being Nina, Helena's cold bargain to save Charlotte. Then the discovery, the parchment in the library, the whispers in the kitchen, the crate of wolfsbane hidden in the apothecary. I told him about Garrett's suspicious behavior and his connection to Lord Brennan of the Bloodriver pack. As I spoke, his face hardened into a mask of cold, controlled fury. The air crackled with his power, a palpable pressure that made it hard to breathe. The rage was not directed at me, but at the betrayal. When I finished, he was silent for a long time. He straightened up, turning his back and staring into the massive fireplace. "My stepmother, Helena," I added, voice shaking. "She is from the Bloodriver pack. I think she sent me here knowing this would happen. I was meant to be a pawn." He let out a short, harsh sound that might have been a laugh if it held any humor. "A pawn," he repeated, his back still to me. "Your family did not trade you to save your sister, Nina—" My real name, for the first time, and the sound of it on his lips was both a shock and a strange comfort. "They sent a lamb into a den of wolves, hoping the wolves would be so busy tearing you apart they wouldn't notice the hunters at the door. Your death was meant to be the catalyst for my own." The cold, calculated cruelty stole my breath. I wasn't just a sacrifice. I was the bait. Finally, he turned to face me. The rage in his eyes was gone, replaced by something far more intense, something that made my heart hammer. It was a raw, possessive fire. "You are a lie," he said, voice a low growl. "You were sent to my court under false pretenses. You are the daughter of my enemies." He took a step closer. "And you came to me with the truth. You chose to warn the man you were sent to distract. Why?" I looked into his scarred face, at the pain hidden behind his storm cloud eyes. Pain I was beginning to understand. "Because no one deserves to be betrayed by their own family," I whispered. Something broke in his expression, a flicker of vulnerability, a shared understanding of being used and discarded by those who should have protected us. In that moment, the mating bond between us, which had been a quiet hum of awareness, ignited like a forest fire. It was a dizzying, overwhelming wave of emotion. His protectiveness, his loneliness, his reluctant admiration, all crashing against my own fear and burgeoning loyalty. I felt an undeniable pull toward him, a need to soothe the ancient ache in his soul. He closed the distance between us in a single step. He cupped my face in his hands, his touch surprisingly gentle. "Nina," he breathed, his gaze burning into mine. "You may have been sent here as a lie, but the bond we share is the only truth that matters now. You are my mate, my queen, and I will burn this world to the ground for anyone who dares to harm you." And then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was fierce, desperate, acclaiming. It was the taste of winter storms and wood smoke, of pain and power, of a promise sealed in the face of betrayal. In that moment, standing in the heart of a conspiracy, I was no longer a prisoner. I was his queen, and we had a war to win. The kiss reshaped our world. We were alpha and queen, united not just by ceremony, but by shared threat and fierce loyalty. "We cannot let them know you have warned me," Rowan said, voice a low rumble. "They believe you are a timid, frightened girl. We will use that. You will be my eyes and ears among the palace staff. Garrett and his conspirators will not see you as a threat." His plan was dangerous. I was to continue playing the meek, isolated queen while secretly feeding him information. In public, he would remain distant. In private, everything was different. Our nights changed. He no longer slept in the armchair. He would join me in the bed, not as a lover, but as a guardian. He would simply hold me, his powerful body a warm, solid shield against the darkness. In those quiet hours, he would talk. He told me about the assassination, the smell of wolfsbane in the air, the sight of his parents falling, the searing agony as the poison took his leg. He spoke of the lonely years that followed, of having to become a ruthless king at 17 to hold his fractured kingdom together. He trusted me with his scars, both visible and hidden, and I told him of my life as a shadow in my own home, of the constant ache of being unwanted. We were two broken souls finding solace in each other's fractured pieces. My role began immediately. I made a point of visiting the kitchens, the stables, the laundry, learning my queenly duties. I spoke to servants, offering kind words, a helping hand. They had only ever known a king who ruled through fear. A queen who ruled with quiet grace was a novelty. Slowly, their wariness began to thaw. They started to talk. A stable boy mentioned seeing Garrett meeting with a merchant known to work for Lord Brennan. A kitchen maid confided that one of the new cooks, hired a month ago, was from the Bloodriver pack and seemed to ask too many questions about the king's dining habits. Each night I relayed these scraps to Rowan. He would listen intently, piecing them together with his strategic mind. We worked as one, a silent, deadly team. Our biggest break came from Beta Silas. Rowan, trusting his oldest friend, brought him into our confidence. Silas's reaction was stunned disbelief, followed by shame. "I misjudged you, my queen," he said, bowing his head. "My loyalty to him blinded me to your own." From that moment, Silas became my staunchest ally. It was Silas who discovered the traitor's timeline. The upcoming winter solstice feast was the target. The one night when tradition dictated the Alpha King would drink from a ceremonial goblet blessed by the pack elders. One of those elders was now loyal to Garrett. The new cook would poison the wine. The elder would serve it. And Rowan would be dead before the main course. In the ensuing chaos, Lord Brennan's men, already hidden within merchant caravans, would storm the citadel. But the next piece of the puzzle made my blood run cold. An intercepted letter from Lord Brennan to Helena laid the plan bare. I was never meant to be a simple distraction. I was the final piece of their political theater. After Rowan's death, Garrett was to seize me, the grieving widow, and publicly execute me, claiming I was the mastermind behind the assassination. My death would sever the alliance with the Moonstone Pact completely, painting Alpha Marcus as a co-conspirator and justifying Brennan's subsequent invasion. Charlotte was never intended for Rowan. She had been promised to Brennan's son all along, her fate to be the princess of a new kingdom forged from Rowan's ashes. "She didn't trade you to save your sister," Rowan snarled, crushing the parchment in his fist. "She sentenced you to death to elevate her." The depth of Helena's betrayal was breathtaking. She had orchestrated not just my marriage, but my murder and the downfall of two great packs, all for her ambition. A cold, hard resolve settled in my heart, displacing the last vestiges of fear. I was not the timid girl who had arrived at this citadel. I was a queen, and these people had threatened my mate, my pack, and my life. They would not succeed. They think I am your weakness, I said to Rowan, voice ringing with strength I didn't know I possessed. Let's show them I am your sword. A slow, dangerous smile spread across Rowan's lips, the first genuine smile I'd ever seen. It transformed his scarred face, making him look devastatingly handsome. At the solstice feast, he declared, we will give them a show they will never forget. The trap was set. The hunters were about to become the hunted, and the timid dove they had sent to slaughter was about to reveal her claws. The great hall of the Iron Spire Citadel was ablaze with light for the winter solstice feast. A fire roared in the massive hearth. Pack members filled the hall with laughter and conversation. The festive atmosphere was a perfect mask for the deadly tension simmering beneath. I sat beside Rowan on the dais, wearing a gown the color of blood and obsidian. My heart hammered, but my face was serene. I had practiced this composure for days. Rowan's hand rested on my thigh beneath the table, his thumb drawing slow, reassuring circles, a silent promise of the storm to come. Across the hall I saw Garrett. He kept flicking his eyes toward us, toward the ceremonial goblets placed before Rowan. Beta Silas moved through the crowd, seemingly a gracious host, but his path was strategic. He ensured that warriors loyal to Rowan were positioned near every exit and behind every major conspirator. The new cook from the Bloodriver pack was in the kitchens, being watched by two of Rowan's most trusted guards disguised as kitchen hands. Every piece was in place. The feast began. Courses came and went. The mood grew more raucous. Finally, the moment arrived. The elder, a wizened wolf named Leopold, who was in Garrett's pocket, stood. "A toast," he proclaimed, voice quavering with false reverence, "to the Alpha King, Rowan, and his new queen. May their union bring strength and prosperity to the pack." He filled Rowan's ornate silver goblet from a special flagon, the poisoned flagon. He brought it to the dais with trembling hands and presented it to Rowan. A hush fell over the hall. This was the moment. I could feel the collective breath of the conspirators being held. Rowan took the goblet. He raised it high. His eyes swept the room, pausing for a fraction of a second on Garrett, a silent challenge in their storm cloud depths. He brought the goblet to his lips. I watched Garrett's face. A triumphant smirk began to form. And then Rowan stopped. He lowered the goblet without drinking, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Elder Leopold," Rowan said, his voice ringing with authority through the silent hall, "a tradition as old as this one deserves to be shared. It is only fitting that the one who offers the blessing should be the first to partake in it. A show of loyalty. Drink." He held the goblet out to the elder. The color drained from Leopold's face. He began to tremble violently. "But, Your Majesty, it is for you. It is tradition. I am your king. I am making a new tradition." Rowan's voice was like ice. "Drink, or show every wolf in this hall that you have brought poison to my table." Panic erupted in Leopold's eyes. He looked desperately toward Garrett, who was frozen in his seat, his face a mask of horror. The trap had been sprung. Leopold, seeing no way out, let out a pathetic whimper and knocked the goblet from Rowan's hand. It clattered to the floor, the dark red wine spilling across the stone like blood. "Treason!" Garrett roared, realizing the plan was lost. It was the signal. He and a dozen other alphas drew hidden blades. "The king is a tyrant. He would poison our elders. He is unfit to rule." Chaos erupted, but it was controlled chaos. Before Garrett's men could take 2 steps, they were surrounded. Silas and the Loyalists moved with brutal efficiency, a tide of claws and steel. Rowan rose from his throne, but he did not join the fray below. His eyes were locked on Garrett, who was now fighting desperately against 2 royal guards. With a predator's grace that completely belied his limp, Rowan vaulted over the dais railing, landing silently on the floor behind his main rival. Garrett whirled around, blade raised, only to find the Alpha King standing before him. The fight was short and merciless. Rowan moved like a phantom, his limp a deceptive feint in his devastating dance of death. He disarmed Garrett with 2 swift moves and slammed him to his knees. The hall fell silent once more. The only sound, the groans of the captured traitors. Rowan stood over the defeated Garrett, the tip of his sword at the man's throat. "You brought the taint of Wolfsbane back into my home," Rowan growled, his voice vibrating with rage that was centuries old. "You conspired with my enemies. You sought to murder your king." He glanced up, his gaze finding me on the dais. "And you used my queen, my mate, as a pawn in your pathetic grasp for power." He looked down at Garrett. "Your sentence is death." But he didn't kill him. Not yet. He turned to the crowd, his voice booming. This treachery did not begin here. It was orchestrated by Lord Brennan of the Bloodriver Pack, and by a viper we welcomed as family. He gestured to the main doors. They swung open, and 2 guards marched in, dragging 2 figures between them, Helena and Charlotte. They had been captured at the border by a squad Rowan had dispatched days ago. Helena's face was a mask of disbelief and fury. Charlotte was weeping, a picture of spoiled terror. "Helena Hartley," Rowan declared, "you orchestrated this plot to murder me and install your pathetic lapdog Brennan on my throne. You sacrificed your own stepdaughter, sentencing her to death, all for your own ambition." He looked at me, then back at the stunned crowd. "But you underestimated her. You saw a pawn. I found a queen. It was she who uncovered your plot. It was your discarded daughter, the Queen of the Ironspire, who saved her king and this pack." A murmur of awe rippled through the hall. Every eye turned to me, no longer with suspicion, but with newfound, profound respect. I stood tall, meeting their gazes. I was no longer the girl who scrubbed floors. I was the woman who had saved a kingdom. Rowan dealt with the traitors swiftly. Their fate was exile and ruin, their names to be stricken from pack history. Helena and Charlotte were handed over to my stepfather, Alpha Marcus, along with proof of their treason for him to dispense his own pack's justice. Their power was broken forever. When the hall was cleared of the traitors and the dead, Rowan limped back to the dais. He came to me, ignoring the blood and the mess, and knelt before me. He took my hand and pressed it to his scarred cheek. "Nina," he said, his voice raw with emotion for all to hear, "they sent you to be my end. Instead, you are my beginning." He rose and pulled me to my feet, turning to face the remaining pack members. "This is your queen. Not by bargain, not by treaty, but by loyalty, by courage, and by the will of the goddess herself. She is the heart of this pack, and she is the heart of its king." A thunderous roar of approval shook the very foundations of the citadel. They were not cheering for a king and his consort. They were cheering for their alpha and their queen, a true bonded pair. That night in our chambers, there were no more barriers between us. He came to me not as a king or a warrior, but as my mate. He showed me that his scars were not a sign of weakness, but a testament to his survival. His limp was not a flaw, but a reminder of the strength it took to stand at all. And I learned that the girl who was traded for being disposable had found her true worth in the arms of the one man everyone else had deemed broken. We were 2 halves of a whole, forged in betrayal and tempered by fire. And together we would rule the Ironspire Citadel not as a prison, but as our home. And so the crippled king and the discarded daughter found their strength not in perfection, but in each other's scars. Nina was sent as a weapon meant to destroy the Ironspire throne, but she became the shield that protected it, and the queen who healed the king's heart. Their story reminds us that true power isn't about the absence of wounds, but the courage to wear them as armor. It proves that sometimes the greatest love stories are born from the